Um, how's it going? We were way deep in the jungle all of a sudden. We were supposed to go to a place that wasn't quite ready, so we had to scramble to find a spot. And I found this amazing little hut in the deep forest, about an hour outside of Tenna. So we're really stoked. The energy, it seems like the deeper into the jungle you go, the more clean and inspiring, and there's just this like presence throughout the Amazon that is just really invigorating. I guess is a good word for it. So I had a different stream planned for tonight. We made an amazing thumbnail that I'm super stoked about, but I didn't have time to get all the gear set up. Started to get too late. So I wanted to talk about discernment and Phuk-woo tonight because it's something that it's a difficult subject to broach, I guess, because um, it's difficult to talk about it without, I guess, sounding a little bit condescending. Um, but I I can't help but notice that it seems like just in general across the board, people's critical thinking skills are not what they used to be. And there are a number of different reasons for this, I think, and it depends on which arena that you're speaking about. So, we all have seen throughout our lives, this is nothing new, but the political indoctrination, the social and cultural pressures that people put on each other to conform to whatever party narrative it is, or whatever their demographic expects of them. People kind of feel compelled, I guess, to meet the expectations. I found out the hard way that and people even that are very close to you will abandon you. They will shocked me when I started to deviate at all from, I guess, the narrative people expected of me. How immediate and backlash was. Um, so and it's not. We have to remember these people are doing all of this automatically. It's not like they're deliberately trying to suppress free thought. There may be powers that be up in the peak of the pyramid or whatever, there that are encouraging this kind of behavior. But for most people, it's genuine horror that, for example, a luminostic would deviate from. At the time, I was probably expected to toe the liberal line, and just whatever liberals were saying and doing, you would assume that that's what I was going to do. And that has turned out not to be the case as we have deviated from common sense and discernment and critical thinking. You're kind of required to abandon a lot of that stuff to stick with any political narrative. And it's definitely not just the liberals and the left. The right wing just has a different set of um, or different parameters that they're expected to think and act within. And in order to support someone, like the one of the best examples that I actually, both parties' leaders make excellent examples of this, right? The anti-racism and pro-women narrative on the left. If you take a good hard look at Joe Biden and the things that he said and his history, you have some issues there, and Kamala Harris as well. Serious problems. And then the people that believed that Donald Trump was going to be the pedo hunter, if you look at his past and his trips to Epstein Island and the things that he said about his daughter, videos of her taking his hands off of, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. And so it's like people are like backed into a corner with this stuff. Yeah, legalize LSD. Of course, that's, no brainer. Replace not just the water, but all of the air molecules with it as well, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about, and it's not just with politics. I think what's kind of happened is that the mind sort of replicates its patterns, and if you have been conditioned to allow cognitive dissonance to just exist as part of your fundamental being, it's going to be present in your spirituality. It's going to be present. It's going to influence your dietary decisions, your method of evaluating information. The other day I actually mentioned Aubrey Marcus and how, up until this point, I felt like Aubrey Marcus was one of the few people out there that I could pretty much wholeheartedly support. Everything he said seemed to be coming from a well-intentioned place. It seemed like he was smart. I could support all of it, and that's pretty rare for me. Um, Yeah, I apologize if the sound's not great. That's one of the reasons I didn't set up the other stream. I might actually have to pre-record everything. We're just way out in the middle of the jungle, and we don't have a lot of upload speed, especially at night. So maybe it'll be better during the day, but it just is what it is for now. Um, so what was I saying? Oh, Aubrey Marcus. Yeah, so I felt like this is one of the few kindred spirits out there that I had no issues with. And then I saw a short clip. I'm actually going to remix it. What's going on, Oracle? Of him with a guest. Good man. I need to talk to you about the Discord. There are people asking me, like, apparently if you have a link that goes through Facebook and you don't have Facebook, if you try to use the link, it doesn't work. And so I'm not very technologically savvy, so yeah, it'd be great to get that sorted out. And thank you again. By the way, patrons, we have a Discord for all patrons. We may even just open it up in general, and then we'll have private rooms for patrons or something. Um, um, Anyways, so this Aubrey Marcus thing. Let me get to this. Uh, He had a guest on. I don't know who the guy was. He looked like he was trying way too hard to look a certain way, which is a red flag in the first place. Like super what do you like what is that, like the lead singer from Red Hot Chili Peppers, that style of whatever. This dude was, that's I had an immediate red flag in terms of, like, I guess his sincerity. But they started. The first thing the guy said that bothered me is like reincarnation. People just need to accept it as a reality. Didn't make a case for why. There was no reasoning at all. Just people need to do this. And then he went on to say that if you have a belief system, even if it is totally objectively false, if it makes you feel good, then you should believe it. That is horrifically stupid advice. I mean, it is incredibly bad. No one should do that. No one should do that. And this brings us to, the real fundamental heart of the issue of Phuk-woo and the lost art of discernment. Should bring the same skill set to the table when you are navigating the metaphysical, the spiritual, the philosophical, as you would any other arena. It's, you have to still use discernment. You have to practice detachment from ideas, right? When the Buddha said that, all suffering came from attachment, it's, in my opinion, mostly attachment to ideas, ideologies, belief systems. There is an amazing writer that the psychedelic movement, or however you want to think of it, seems to be forgetting. And his name was Robert Anton Wilson. And I think I mentioned him in the last stream a bunch. But he was really, really anti BS. And by BS, he means belief system. Right? Bullshit belief system, same abbreviation for good reason. And so, for myself, I I've put a tremendous amount of work into uh, cultivating certain aspects of myself, and I still, no matter how advanced I feel like I am in any subject, or how cautious and deliberate I've been when I'm doing my research, and how thorough, I still never believe anything, especially subjective experience. And, I'm tempted to go through some of the experiences that I've had recently with people where when they presented an idea to me, I was immediately able to just dismantle it from 150 different directions. And what I noticed was that people, and this isn't just one person, this is like a kind of a normal thing. It's like the understanding of what subjectivity is and what opinion is has somehow broken down. Facts are not subjective. Certain elements of our existence are not subjective. And I don't know if this came from like the sort of new age influence in the early 2000s. I can remember when there was a big push for people to accept the idea that, your truth is true for you. It's your truth. And that, I think, may have been where a lot of us got confused. It's not your truth, it's your opinion. And it's not just going to suddenly become real. Another element of this that I think has sort of corroded people's perception of this idea that the slit experiment in quantum physics means that you can think your way into a brand new house or whatever. In a way, you can. I'm not saying it's totally false. Um, but the reality is that that observer effect and the way it was presented in the movie that made that idea famous is not really correct. And there have been subsequent experiments to look directly at this question, like, is there some influence between consciousness and particle quantum particles? And the answer is yes, actually, maybe, but it's very minute. And you're not going to be changing your destiny or manifesting a house just by influencing quantum particles. That whole movement and that whole thing, I think it kind of, it's sort of bleshed with this idea that your truth is true and your mind can control physics and therefore you can just live in whatever reality you want. And it's just not real, And I disagree with Aubrey Marcus and his guests so wholeheartedly that, spirituality should be about finding comforting beliefs that help you get through your day, whether they're true or not. I think that that is dangerous and insane to tell people to do that. The opposite is what we need to do. And, the mystery traditions that I have studied for most of my life and the shamanic traditions here in South America, you're learning to do the opposite. You are, and also Buddhism, and meditation, you are trying to condition yourself to allow yourself to have the courage and to have the objectivity and the neutrality even to perceive the universe as it actually is and to not try to superimpose your own wish demons on reality and make them real. That is, that's like one of the most powerful examples of, and literal examples of good intentions paving the road to hell. You know what I mean? Because if you want to successfully navigate the universe, you need to be able to ascertain what it is, what it's shaped like, how you're relating to it, and you need to do it all objectively, you know? Um, so Phuk-woo, it's not, um, it is not the way, it is not the Tao. The Tao is what it is, it's not necessarily just whatever you want it to be. Um, and I hate that almost everyone I interact with at this point is someone that watches my YouTube channel. So when I need to draw like specific examples from my life, I'm always worried that somebody's going to feel like I'm picking on them because chances are nearly 100% that if I use one of these examples that I'm thinking of, that person's going to see this. Um, so so I'm really hesitant to do that, but yeah, that's that kind of logic, that facts are malleable, that your mind is superimposing your will onto reality to a degree that it's not. And this isn't just my opinion. All the great magicians have warned about this throughout history. Even the people that will tell you that your consciousness does have some ability to interface with fundamental reality, which I do believe is true, and experiment does. Actually, let me cite the experiment. So, the observer effect with the slits, I'm sure you guys all know. I don't really want to bother to explain what it was because I doubt there's anyone alive that doesn't know about this experiment by now. But there was a really famous movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? And basically their interpretation of the slit experiment was that the person's expectations influenced the outcome of the experiment, which is just not even true. There's no truth to that at all. It's not what happened. And that's not what the physicists were saying was happening. And if you watch extra credits on the DVD, or not extra credits. What is it? The deleted scenes or whatever. The physicists are actually complaining that they were angry that the editors of the movie made them say things that they never said. And that, if you ask me, is like crazy that people would do that, manipulate people. Right on, man. That people would do that just to sell an idea, right? They're telling you what you want to hear. They know you want to hear it, and they know that they need to appear to be saying so that it conforms with what they know they can sell you, right? And this is why Woo has got to go, you guys. You can't trust anything. You cannot trust any of the information out there, right? You have to learn, you have to develop your critical thinking, your discernment, your objectivity, your neutrality, all of these things, and it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to slaughter your own sacred cows, you know? Um, like we fall in love with ideas for a reason. What's going on, Misty? But that doesn't mean that they actually serve us, And it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing. By the way, you guys, if you have any questions or anything, feel free in the chat. Like I'm using my selfie camera, and it's probably grainy, but I did that just so I can see the chat because I don't have my laptop down here. Tomorrow, by the way, you guys, I hope everyone shows up because I'm gonna do just like a casual acoustic. Hopefully, the internet is solid enough. I forgot about that. Is it? Will somebody let me know if it's still like clipping or if it's coming through? The audio's okay. Um, because I really want to do some live streaming from the jungle here. It's just such a great atmosphere, and it's such an extraordinary place. Um, I'd like to build a little fire over there and do like a fireside performance. Worst case scenario, I guess. Okay, right on. It just won't be live. I'll have to pre-record it and then put it up later. Um, so yeah, what I was saying is that there's a guy named Dan Rader. I'm pretty sure that's his name. Um, Yeah, I can. I will answer that question in just a second, Chris, about LSD. The problem with this chat when I do it on my phone is it disappears after a couple seconds and I can't see it again. So I have to remember if there's questions. But Dan Rader. Okay, so the slit experiment and that movie, what the bleep, misrepresenting what all these physicists said to make it sound like they were saying that your thoughts influence the outcome of the experiment. None of them said that. And by the way, that ice crystal experiment that was in that movie is total garbage. That guy's not a scientist. It wasn't real. The whole thing was a scam. It's one of the dumbest scams ever. Like if you read the book, it's like, I'm sorry, if you bought into that one, that was like, it was totally fake. Nothing real about it. And actually, we'll go through that bit by bit because I can show you kind of how, if you were duped by it, how you could not be duped by it next time something like that comes up. But yeah, both of those things in that movie were totally fake. Not totally. The slit experiment may have some reality to it. So Dan Rader was also in that movie. Um, yeah, it's not real though, bro. Um, uh, Dan Rader was also in that movie, and so um, he was aware of the noise, right? That some physicists were saying, okay, well, the consciousness plays a role, but most of them were saying that's completely stupid. It doesn't. What is consciousness? How is it affecting anything? Like, what are you even talking about? You can't even like define your term, and yet you're claiming it has some kind of deterministic effect on invisibly on particles. What are you even saying? Of course, I would say that the mechanism would be just the fact that they're electromagnetic waves, but not going to get into all that. Here, I'm just saying that Dan Rader devised an experiment that his protocol was reviewed by Harvard and it was given a Sigma Phi rating, which is the highest rating for scientific protocol. And they found that the observer actually could influence the outcome of experiments and that people that meditated were exponentially better at it. So there does seem to be some truth to it, but does it mean you can manifest a new car? No, it doesn't. Okay, so Chris's question, the science behind LSD and why it is so helpful when you meditate. I don't know what you mean by the science behind LSD, but if you're talking about neurobiology and neurochemistry, uh, basically the magic of all psychedelics comes from their Well, a couple of things, but the main things probably are neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. Interestingly, with LSD, there is electrical activity in parts of the brain that we don't normally use ever, even advanced meditators, because we have brain scans from all of these, meditating masters from Tibet and whatnot. This electrical activity that has been recorded in these parts of the brain, it's the only time it's ever been seen. So you're literally using parts of your brain. We have no idea what they're for, what happens, what is going on in there. Um, that's the only time there's electrical activity in these parts of the brain. So that is an extraordinary thing, and I have ideas about what that means. I think that probably metacognition and uh, those sort of parapsychological phenomena that we intermittently observe, and that's really, by the way, why science disregards it. It's not that there aren't enough compelling cases; it's the fact that they can't be reproduced consistently. No one seems to have ESP that works all the time. And in my personal experience, that's just how it is. I have had telepathy that is unquestionable. There's no possibility that it wasn't real. It's been uh, researched with ayahuasca. The active components in ayahuasca used to be called telepamine and telepathy, because of this, it's peppered throughout the anthropological record, examples of this kind of thing. So it happens, and any mother knows that. I have yet to see a toddler and a mother that do not exhibit unarguable telepathy from time to time. But it's just that it's let's see, what is this? If chakras and opening the pineal gland is BS or legit, and can it be done? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is legit. It is. Well, I don't know about chakras. No one's ever seen a chakra, and if you have seen a chakra, you don't know whether you were hallucinating or not. I mean, so I'm not convinced about chakras, but the pineal gland definitely. I'm 100% positive about that, and I'll tell you why in a second. But let me get through this thing with LSD and metacognition and enhanced intelligence, enhanced memory. And so, other than the electrical activity in parts of the brain where there normally never is any, there's also inter-region communication, and it's interesting because as the dose increases, it goes down, which seems to be good. But a lot more mapping and studying needs to be done. But there is like inter-region communication, like hemisync, that happens when you take psilocybin and LSD, that has a lot of benefits. But the neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, I think, are probably the most important aspects of what these compounds do. And it's so powerful, in fact, that psilocybin has been observed to bring damaged brain cells back to life. So, in the case of depression or alcoholism, you can kind of think of it as the cells are sort of shriveled and dried out, and they will come completely back to a healthy state when psilocybin is administered. And so, prior to the observation that psilocybin could do that, it was believed to be impossible. And this is so promising and remarkable that there are actually ongoing experiments right now at Johns Hopkins University to try to use psilocybin to revive people that are completely brain dead. And I would bet a testicle that it'll work, because why wouldn't it? So there's that, and then I mean, I know I've mentioned this on this channel before, but it's pretty important that pranayama combined with a manageable dose of LSD. So when he's talking about meditating on LSD, he's not talking about taking a 10 strip and trying to meditate. Unless you have the skill set to do that, it is possible. But for most people, a moderate dose is going to be best, probably between 60 and 100 micrograms, 60 and 120 maybe. There's kind of a sweet spot in there for most people where you're totally in the psychedelic space, but also able to do anything. You can almost turn it off if you needed to. And so the pranayama, the fourfold breath, is the simplest, and it involves inhaling for a count of four, holding for a count of four, exhaling for a count of four, keeping it distended for a count of four, and then repeating this process. You'll notice that the four sort of implies a cube, which is sort of relevant to this practice, I guess. And so what's happening is that you're meditating, and when you inundate the brain with oxygen, it sort of helps you to write a new program. And because you have taken LSD or psilocybin and your brain is more neuroplastic, you are able to sort of write these programs much more rapidly than normal, and it does actually stick. One researcher at, I think it was Princeton, said that the things that are learned with moderate doses of psychedelics, it's as if they've been just branded into the brain, whereas they might have to have been learned over years by rote and repetition. You can just brand it right in there. So that's the science behind that. And then T was asking about the pineal gland and whether chakras in the pineal gland are bullshit or not. Um, Whether there was cross pollination or not, I'm not sure. It's definitely possible, but the Kabbalistic tree of life has a sephirot going down the center that correspond to the seven chakras of the, I guess it's the Vedic system. And so, that's interesting if there was not communication between these two cultures. Otherwise, who cares, right? And that's, again, discernment. Like, you have to look for stuff like that. If you just see the Sephiroth lining up with chakras and then you don't say, well, wait a minute, was there cross pollination culturally here? And if so, then it's not, interesting. Um, oh, right. I was going to talk also about the ice crystal experiment and how you can know instantly that it was total crap. Um, But first, this the pineal gland thing. So, when I realized that there was absolutely a connection between the pineal gland and sort of sixth sense and DMT, which, by the way, a lot of the stuff that they say about the pineal gland and DMT is actually not real. Um, what happened is, what's the guy's name? He wrote The Spirit Molecule. Uh, and he theorized, just pure conjecture, no experiment done, nothing to support this at all. He was just saying, I think maybe it's born or it's released when you're born and when you die and during REM sleep. No experiment was done. He had no reason to believe it, and that's not, he didn't say he did. So that stuff has been totally taken out of context and has become this like urban legend. Also, people talk about how you can use breathing to release DMT. I hate to tell you this, but there's not enough DMT in your entire system. If you were to collect it all at once and smoke it, it wouldn't be enough to cause a psychedelic experience. So the people that say that are just saying stuff. There's no reason for that. It just literally is impossible. You may experience an altered state of consciousness because of breath work, but it's not because you release DMT. There's not enough in your entire body. So that's also a myth. But here's what happened with me and the pineal gland that the connection between metacognition, I guess, is absolutely certain. And so I had experienced this kind of telepathy with this shaman quite a bit. The first time, this may have been the same night that this thing that I'm going to relate about the pineal gland happened, but I had met my partner who is upstairs now with our child who's 3. Um, and the ayahuasca spirit or whatever told me that she would have my babies, and I thought that's just ridiculous. We weren't involved. She was much younger. Most of you guys have probably heard that story, but it turned out to be true. So that's sort of one early example of this. And remember that there's so many instances of this sort of telepathic experience and precognition. There's an instance of it in Sir Walter Raleigh's diary, uh, all through the anthropological record, and then also in the 1960s, Masters in Houston wrote a book called The Varieties of Psychedelic Experience, where they documented experiments that they did that pretty much proved, with beyond a shadow of a doubt, that ayahuasca does give people the ability to be telepathic. Um, so I was sitting on the deck with my eyes closed, and I hadn't told the shaman the name of my partner. I don't know that I even knew it, but I was trying to decide how, like, if I should ask her to lunch instead of dinner, because I didn't want it to be, I was trying to be casual or something. And he said, I was sitting there with my eyes closed thinking about this, and I didn't even know he was sitting beside me. And I open my eyes after I'm thinking about this, and he looks at me and he goes, "The German girl." Invite her to tea, but by the river. And that's what I had settled on. Well, we'll just have tea. That's my last thought. And then I opened my eyes and he said, the German girl, invite her to tea, but by the river. And I was like, what? And then later, or actually earlier in the day in the bus on the way there, before we even drank the ayahuasca, actually, we were, I was sitting next to him and I was thinking about how, ayahuasca had said, she will have your babies. And I was like, whatever. I was thinking about that and he looked at me and he goes, the first time I saw my partner, I knew that she would have my children. And I was like, what the hell? So this was kind of a routine thing with this guy anyways. But so later on that night, or maybe the next night, I was laying on the deck at this house in the jungle and a mosquito, I heard it coming and then it landed on my forehead and it bit me. But I realized that I could see it the whole time. But everything was kind of orange, like I was looking through blood. And I was like, no, 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 that can't be. So I started waving my hands in front of my face with my eyes closed, and I could see every movement so accurately. And I thought, no, 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 the brain is incredibly powerful. I'm sure it could track this and figure out how to simulate it. That's not good enough. So I sat up and I looked down the deck and I could see all the railing, and I stood up and walked around a little bit with my eyes closed, right? And I thought, well, none of this quite proves it. I mean, it's weird. It seems like I'm looking out of my pineal gland right now, but none of this is absolute proof. And so the next morning I went down to the, I don't know what to call it, like the breakfast area, I guess. It's really just under the house. uh, and the shaman, when he sees me, he doesn't say good morning. He doesn't say, hello, how are you doing? Any of this stuff. He just says, sometimes you can see through your forehead when you drink the medicine. And so the connection in that moment was made between not only the fact that, as I would discover when I got home, right, it occurred to me to Google and see, does the pineal gland have rods and cones, and is it wired to the brain in the proper way? And it is. So seeing through it is totally possible. In fact, I had a friend that suggested to me that when you close your eyes and you have that eidetic visuals, that's what's happening. You close your eyes, you can still see. It's just dark, right? So, that's actually, that light's too bright. So yeah, I thought, wow, that's actually, totally reasonable. And explain what happened with that, just randomly, just says sometimes you can see through your forehead when you drink the medicine. And so that also kind of established a connection with the sixth sense, because this was like a telepathic thing. And I want to be clear that I don't think that, and from my own experience of doing this to people, people have told me that I do to them what this shaman did to me. It's not really conscious. You're not thinking like, oh, I'm reading their mind right now and later I'm going to say something about it and, blow their mind or whatever. It's not like that. You just sort of have an impulse to say something and you're not really aware of the full, like, scope of it. Okay, so to bring the topic back to discernment again, though, let's talk about this ice crystal featured in What the Bleep. The idea was, in my mind, incredibly dumb to begin with. That you tape bottles or tape words onto bottles of water and freeze them, and just the taped, you know, the vibe of this written word would cause the ice crystals to form very specific shapes. Um, right away, there are two things that hit me right in the pineal gland. And the one thing is that and they did say in one of them, this one was blessed by a Buddhist monk and all that, but ice crystals don't form that way in water. They just don't. That's just not real. Those were snowflakes. Those were pictures of snowflakes. That's not. It just doesn't happen. And if you were going to prove that ideas caused water to take a certain form and crystallize that way, the vibration would cause every crystal in that bottle to be the same. But he had one picture of each vibration, the way it affected, because no two snowflakes are the same. right? So just with a little bit of scrutiny, this all starts to fall apart. But then the real nail in the coffin is that if you look at his slides, not to mention if you actually read the book, there's no attempt at any kind of legitimate scientific protocol at all. Um, but if you look at the slide that says "I hate you, you're so ugly" or something, he had very obviously added oil and dyed the water all kinds of ugly colors. Why is that necessary? Obviously, the water didn't turn green and yellow and get oily. Um, it was deliberate deception. And yeah, so and like I said, it's not that hard to figure this out. Another one that I'll give you an example of. Somebody suggested that I check out this vegan's YouTube channel, um, and that it would convince me that all disease is caused by eating meat, and the guy was suggesting that humans developed the taste for meat by feeding on like lion kills in the African savannah. If there is a lion kill in the African savannah and you put a human being in that mess trying to eat, hyenas, birds, everything is going to rip them to shreds instantly. The human race would be extinct. And also the vectors for disease, like there's no chance. There's no chance. And when I pointed that out, this particular individual was like, according to you, like getting really upset. No, 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 no. That's not opinion. And that's where I think we've lost kind of touch with objectivity and subjectivity. When something it can be observed and disproved based on observation, that's not opinion. It's not subjective. It's just, and he also said, this is a hypothesis. It's not a hypothesis. It's just something someone said. A hypothesis has substance and can stand up to, some evaluation. And in this case, it's just a tiny little bit of critical thinking, and it just is obviously not possible. So, but then again, we do live in a world where there are actually flat earthers. Um, And that is one. I'm almost upset that I even brought it up because it is such a mind-bogglingly. Let me show. Well, thank you. I mean, hopefully we are studying, and for those of you that have followed me for a while, some of this stuff I've said before, but it's worth really thinking about that. And here's an essential aspect of this. I am not like an abject materialist. I'm not really even an atheist. I'm not even really an agnostic. Because no matter how much scrutiny I apply to experiences of synchronicity that I've had, absolutely, certain experiences of telepathy and the entities or whatever they are, whether they only exist in our consciousness somehow or not, the DMT entities, they have told me such accurate and specific things so many times, right? What I'm saying is that even if you are as critical and skeptical as I am, you still will have something left when it's all over with. And I really do think that's one of the main deterrents. Like when people open themselves up to spirituality and they start just believing everything, I believe in chakras. Why? Just because I'm spiritual now. Have you ever seen one? No. Have you ever sensed one? No. Do you have any reason to believe that? No, but everyone that has their third eye open says they're there. Well, who cares? You know what I mean? Every Bible thumper believes in Jesus. It doesn't make it real. You know what I mean? It's just like, and I think people feel like, you're being negative maybe, or you're trolling people or whatever it is. No, I think that we need to have the same, as I said in the beginning of the stream, the same level of discernment, apply the same critical thinking all of that sort of stuff to our metaphysical and spiritual life that we do to our regular life, because having bad beliefs in the spiritual arena, in the philosophical arena, can get you in just as much trouble as having bad beliefs in the physical realm. Concept of sacred secretion and okay, this keeps coming up. This the idea of sacral secretion, and you know, I don't. I have not experienced that, so I really shouldn't talk about it. You know what I mean? That's another way that I evaluate a lot of, like Sadhguru, for example. Someone asked him about ayahuasca. He's never tried it, but he went on talking about it for 40 minutes. That's not an enlightened person. Enlightened people do not speak, and I'm not saying that I'm enlightened. I'm just saying that enlightened people do not speak about things of which they have no direct knowledge, right? Don't do that. That's ridiculous. Like, what kind of asshat would do that? You can't do that. But I do have a 32nd degree Freemason who goes by Modern Mystic that I've been talking to. We're going to do a chat at some point, and he talks about that. He is actually sort of a Christian Gnostic, which is where we kind of well, here's the thing. It's not real. And if you guys have watched any of my Freemason videos, you might remember, and it's not like I'm the only person that knows this, right? The third degree and below doesn't have any clue what Freemasonry is. And then it starts getting a little bit more, having a little bit more substance up until the 32nd degree, and that's where kind of the veil is lifted way back in the 33rd degree, a whole nother level, and there's actually a level above the 33rd. But what they say, and what I noticed in the lodge when I joined in Ukiah, California, I said something at one of the dinners very early on about how, you know, people think this is a Christian, or how did I put it? I don't know. I said something about how, you know, it's not really a Christian organization, and it was obvious that all of the third degree and below thought that it was. So when this guy sent me a private message, he actually mentioned that, you know, I'm not sure how to tell all these people that Christ is really just a composite of Dionysus and Osiris and, you know, all of these other beings, right? So he's doing it too, basically. His public face is Christian. But, you know, I posted that chat actually in my subscriber community, so you can see it. But yeah, that was funny when I realized that he also was putting on the Christian front in public, and it's not real. Which also a lot of people point that out about Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati. He was also doing that out of necessity, you know. Yeah, I'm not done with that series on Bill Cooper. I've just been really busy, and the last one kind of pissed me off a little bit. He was just going so far off the deep end that I really didn't see why it was productive. Honestly, I was doing that because someone sent me some Bitcoin to do it, and I actually agreed to do the whole series, but it's like 150 hours or something. So every now and then I'm gonna do another one to keep my word. But yeah, the last one was just, he was just so going off the deep end, and it was so crazy that it just didn't really seem productive. But what I'm gonna do is go back through them and see if I can find anything else that has substance and is worthy. So that's about 45 minutes. You guys are starting to disappear. I should have asked you all to hit the like button while everyone was still watching. Do me a favor, hit the like button, share these videos, share my channel. I have playlists that would be good to share, because then maybe people will watch a whole lot of them. I am shadow banned across platforms. They have sent me notices to tell me as much. So my content is buried in people's feeds on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And like I said, it's not conspiracy theory. They actually sent me a notice that said, you know, your content is going to be moved lower in people's feed for at least 6 months. And, you know, when you're demonetized on YouTube, No, it's gonna be public. I'm gonna make it public. You know what? I may actually do two versions, and have a patron only unedited version, so that you can see what we say privately, if you're a patron, and then the public one will be edited, uh, so that we don't get our tongues cut out for disclosing secrets to the profane. Um, But yeah, speaking of that, we're still going through the 32nd degree of Albert Pike's, or the description of the 32nd degree, not 32nd, excuse me, 28th degree, in our patron secret streams. And I think it's amazing stuff. So if you're not a patron, please join the Patreon, and you will get to join us in those secret streams. We just started a Discord so everyone can hang out in there, and there are other perks. So join the Illuminati. But seriously, you guys, it is getting late here in the Amazon rainforest, and I'm gonna be getting eaten alive by vampire bats and Brazilian wandering spiders. If right on, Cynthia, if I don't go in and hide soon. Actually, there was a giant spider like right behind me a few minutes ago that was making me a little bit uncomfortable. If you guys don't know what Brazilian wandering spiders are, you should do some research. They're absolutely the stuff of nightmares. They're very aggressive, extremely poisonous. But I actually misspoke. I made a video because I found one in my shower a week or so ago, and it was actually a pretty small one relative to some of the ones I've seen. But I said that it can give you an erection that lasts like 12 hours. Turns out it's 48 hours. And it can bleed, and I guess it's extremely painful. And another crazy thing about this, and you know, this is how nature speaks to the shaman, right? Because, for example, like Bobinsana flowers look like they would open your heart. It's like this explosion of white and pink little hairs, and you know, you just look at it and you're like, oh, that's heart medicine, obviously. And you know, there's a lot of stuff down here like that. That the plant sort of just suggests what it does to you by the way it looks. And it's not just in the Amazon. There are mushrooms that kind of look like brains that are good for your brain, and that sort of thing. But this spider, if you scare it, it puts its two front arms like straight up like an erection, to let you know. It's like, ah, really? You want a death boner? Because they do. They bite you, and then you have a 48-hour erection, and it hurts, and then you die maybe. Um, People actually die from their bite. It's the only spider that's more poisonous than nice, right on, than anything in Australia. And I think now they're saying that we have the most poisonous snake here too. So we're actually starting to beat the Australians at a couple of deadly animals here in the Amazon. The Fer-de-Lance, or the Dos Equis, they call it here. Also, I think the Bushmaster might be the same snake, but there's people are giving it the number one spot over the Taipon, I think, as the most venomous snake in the world. So we have the scariest spider and the scariest snake. On that note, you guys, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, with a music stream. Tomorrow, I am going to take some 1P LSD, which is a legal prodrug that they think metabolizes into LSD in the body. I've done enough research that I'm confident that it's at least safe. But yeah, the day after tomorrow, and I'm gonna set up the electric guitar out in the jungle, and if I don't have enough signal, I'll just pre-record it and post it instead. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Thank you guys so much, and good night.